The Palace of Versailles was the ultimate symbol of European absolute monarchy. Built by Louis XIV, the Sun King, its hall of mirrors and gilded salons proclaimed the divine, untouchable power of the Bourbon dynasty. That is the image of glory and splendor that history records. The horrifying truth, concealed beneath the wigs and silks of the nobility, is that Versailles was a hotbed of political murder, sexual conspiracy, and undetectable poison. The greatest danger in the Sun King's court was not rebellion, but the silver goblet handed to you by a smiling rival. From the mid-17th century through the mid-18th century, the French nobility systematically used poison, often slow-acting and untraceable, to eliminate rivals for royal favor, political office, and wealth. This terrifying hidden war culminated in the infamous affair of the poisons, a purge that uncovered a massive criminal underworld dedicated to dark arts and assassination. The greatest secret of the French throne is that the very power structure built by Louis XIV relied on silent murder to maintain its order. Don't you dare look away. Watch this entire deep dive documentary and subscribe to Crown of Dread, and you will learn the one shocking confession from a famous poisoner that revealed how the highest nobility bought poisons with their own money. The seeds of this poison epidemic were sown by a notorious political assassination that forever changed the rules of French court intrigue. The rise of poison as a political weapon began with a shocking royal death, the supposed sudden illness of Monsieur Philippe III, Duke of Orléans, the king's only brother, who died in 1701. Philippe Vesson was a complex figure known for his flamboyance and controversial lifestyle. His death was officially ruled a sudden stroke or apoplexy. However, court records and later historical analysis point to strong suspicions of poisoning, likely orchestrated by powerful factions who feared his potential influence on the line of succession or who sought to eliminate him for personal vendettas. This assassination, whether proven or merely rumored, was a critical turning point. It cemented the idea that poison was the most effective and deniable tool of political elimination. If the king's own brother could be eliminated quietly through illness, then no one was safe. This event shows how rumors of high-level assassination can be a political tool in themselves. The uncertainty and fear created by an unexplained death are often more destabilizing than an open execution, a tactic still employed by modern intelligence agencies. But the most terrifying element of the Bourbon bloodline was a deep-seated tradition of political incest, designed to prevent the crown from ever leaving the family. Like the Spanish Habsburgs, the French Bourbons became obsessed with consolidating power through close familial alliances, fearing the encroachment of foreign dynasties. This fear led to a recurring pattern of political incest that haunted the entire royal line. While not as genetically devastating as the Habsburgs, the Bourbons frequently married first cousins and relied on highly complex, tight familial alliances. This practice was particularly severe in the early 18th century, where political necessity dictated that the royal families of France, Spain, and Austria constantly intermarried to maintain the European power balance. The royal children, though physically beautiful, were born into a political system that saw them as mere bargaining chips. Their emotional health and genetic viability were secondary to the security of the throne. This created a generation of often unstable, highly fragile heirs who were psychologically incapable of handling the weight of the monarchy. This is a chilling historical reminder that hyper-focused political ambition often leads to the dehumanization of one's own children. The Bourbon lineage proves that the pursuit of absolute power can become a curse, destroying the family from within, even if the result is not immediate physical deformity. But the most immediate threat was the weapon that everyone feared, a poison so advanced that it left the victims simply fading away. The poisoners of Versailles were not crude murderers. They were artists of quiet annihilation. They primarily utilized arsenic and other heavy metal compounds, skillfully administered in small, near undetectable doses over prolonged periods. This method created a terrifying effect known as the slow fade. The victim would not die suddenly, but would suffer a relentless, agonizing decline. Chronic weakness, digestive failure, hair loss, and mental confusion, all symptoms that doctors of the era would easily attribute to consumption, bad humors, or other common illnesses. The beauty of the method for the assassins was that the victim's own doctor often became the unwitting accomplice. The physician, unable to diagnose the true cause, would unknowingly sanction the murder by prescribing ineffective remedies, confusing the historical record and protecting the poisoner. This technique is the historical blueprint for plausible deniability. The assassins understood that the best way to get away with murder is to make the victim's death look like an internal failure. This insidious psychological warfare is far more terrifying than a swift death. But the true scale of this terror was only revealed when the French police stumbled upon the massive criminal underworld supply chain, the infamous affair of the poisons. For years, the poisonings were dismissed as mere rumors and political slander. But in the 1670s, the crown was finally forced to confront the horrifying reality. Their court was riddled with mass assassins. This began the infamous affair of the poisons. The scandal began with the arrest of a series of ritualistic poisoners and fortune-tellers, including the notorious Lavoisin. Their confessions, extracted under torture, exposed a massive, organized network of assassination that spanned Paris and reached directly into the highest nobility of Versailles. Dozens of duchesses, marquises, and royal officials were implicated in buying poisons, hiring assassins, and performing black masses, allegedly including infanticide, to secure political favor. The purge that followed was brutal, personally overseen by Louis XIV. But the king, fearing the collapse of his own court and the permanent disgrace of the nobility, ultimately ordered the suppression of the most high-ranking evidence. The most powerful names involved were quietly imprisoned or exiled, their confessions permanently sealed. This event provides a stark historical parallel to state cover-ups of elite crime. The French crown sacrificed justice to protect the structural integrity of the aristocracy, proving that in systems of absolute power, the preservation of the ruling class always supersedes the rule of law. We have seen the hidden poison, but the story isn't over. The next 5 blocks will reveal the terrifying genetic fate of a royal prince, the true depth of Lavoisin's black masses, and the secret records of high-ranking victims eliminated by the slow fade. The king's official mistresses, or maîtresses en titre, were often the true centers of political power and intrigue at Versailles. Figures like Madame de Montespan and Madame de Pompadour were not merely romantic partners. They were political institutions with access to the highest offices, military appointments, and, crucially, the king's most vulnerable moments. The competition among the mistresses was so fierce that they were often the primary clients in the affair of the poisons. They used poison and dark rituals, not just to eliminate romantic rivals, but to weaken the influence of the queen, remove political opponents from the ministry, and secure lucrative contracts for their own families. This made the king's bedroom the most dangerous political office in France. Montespan, the most powerful mistress of Louis XIV, was later implicated in the poisoning scandal. She allegedly used black magic and potions to maintain the king's affection and eliminate rivals, proving that the pursuit of royal favor justified any crime. This demonstrates how proxies of power operate in any centralized system. The mistresses and courtiers were the historical equivalent of modern political lobbyists, but with a terrifying twist. Their influence was enforced by arsenic instead of donations, proving that the proximity to power often breeds the most ruthless ambition. The greatest irony of Versailles was a bizarre, humiliating social rule that the nobility had to follow, a terrifying rule that left the king utterly exposed to assassination. Louis XIV established a rigid, almost religious schedule for his daily life, starting with the levee, the highly public ritual of the king waking up and being dressed. This ceremony was designed to showcase the king's absolute majesty, but it ironically exposed him to the greatest danger. During the levee, hundreds of high-ranking nobles, ministers, and courtiers were allowed into the king's private chambers to witness his waking and dressing. This ritual, intended to enforce devotion, turned the king's bedroom into a terrifyingly accessible public space. Any noble with a poisoned pin, a subtle toxin, or a concealed weapon could have easily ended the king's life. The king's survival was based not on security, but on the assumption of divine punishment for regicide. The king lived on a razor's edge, surrounded by hundreds of rivals who hated him for his power and arrogance. This bizarre ritual transformed the intimate act of waking into a highly choreographed game of political survival. This shows the historical cost of using spectacle as security. By prioritizing propaganda and the illusion of invulnerability, the king voluntarily made himself the most vulnerable man in France, proving that political narcissism often overrides basic self-preservation. But the true depth of the poisoning scandal was revealed in the terrifying confession of La Voisin, a confession that directly implicated the highest ranks of the royal bloodline. The investigation into the affair of the poisons led to the trial of Catherine Montvoisin, known as La Voisin. She was a fortune teller, abortionist, and, crucially, a highly organized supplier of poisons, love potions, and, most terrifyingly, the performer of black masses. La Voisin's confession, extracted through intense interrogation and later sealed by Louis XIV, revealed the systematic performance of black masses, sacrilegious rituals performed for high-ranking nobles. These rituals, often performed in hidden Paris locations, allegedly involved infant sacrifice and blood rituals, all done to ensure the king's love or to guarantee the success of a poisoning plot. The ultimate shock was the discovery of lists of high-ranking clients who sought out La Voisin's services. These names included many of the most powerful members of the French nobility who were using dark magic and murder as tools of political advancement. The French court was secretly governed not by the divine word of God, but by the dark rituals of Parisian witchcraft. This case is the ultimate historical evidence that wealth and privilege are often used to access the darkest corners of society. The nobility, fearing the natural instability of life, resorted to supernatural solutions for political problems, proving that human desperation, regardless of social class, is the key ingredient for occult crime. But the most agonizing final act of the royal house involved a brilliant prince who was systematically destroyed by an undetectable, slow-acting poison. The affair of the poisons was officially suppressed, but the use of poison continued to haunt Versailles. The most devastating crime of this era was the systematic elimination of the Duke and Duchess of Burgundy and their son in 1712. The Duke of Burgundy was the grandson of Louis XIV, the heir apparent, Dauphin, and a brilliant, pious man set to become a reforming king. Suddenly, he, his wife, and his eldest son died within days of each other, displaying symptoms of a severe, rapid illness, a malignant fever. Later investigations strongly suggested poisoning, likely quick-acting arsenic. The motive was clear. The Duke was a political reformer who was fiercely opposed by the current system of court privilege and the established network of high-ranking nobles. His impending, sane, and competent rule was a direct threat to the power structure of Versailles. The murder of the Dauphin was a preemptive political assassination carried out by the aristocracy to preserve their corrupt lifestyle. This tragic event is a profound historical reminder that corruption fights hardest against genuine reform. The old guard in any system will often resort to the most extreme violence, even the murder of the heir, to stop a leader who threatens their established power and financial gains. But the final terrifying secret of the French throne was the bizarre public ritual of the royal mistress, a ritual that confirmed her terrifying power over the king. The political power of the royal mistress was formally recognized through a humiliating public ritual known as the Stool of Honor. This small piece of furniture symbolized the complete inversion of the traditional power structure. In the presence of the queen, only a duchess was formally allowed to sit on a tabouret, a small stool. The queen's formal rival, the official royal mistress, was often elevated to the rank of duchess or given a special terrifying exemption that allowed her to sit on the stool in the queen's presence. This public display was a direct, calculated humiliation of the queen and a constant visual confirmation of the mistress's political and personal victory. The queen was forced to endure this humiliation daily, watching as the woman who had replaced her in the king's bed and commanded court favors was publicly accorded a status that rivaled her own. This system ensured that the queen's role was minimized, preventing her from becoming a political threat to the king's absolute rule. This highlights the political use of psychological warfare against rivals within the court. The stool was not just a seat, it was a symbol of political dominance, confirming that the most intimate personal relationships were ruthlessly converted into tools of state control. We have seen the hidden murders and the political shame, but the darkest secret of Versailles is the final unseen room, a chamber where the king's most personal, damning secrets were kept. The Bourbon dynasty's ultimate vulnerability was the fragility of its heirs. Despite the rigorous political control and the efforts to secure the bloodline, the line of succession was plagued by devastating illness and sudden death, leading to a profound sense of doom within the court. The Dauphin, the king's son, and the Grand Dauphin, the king's grandson, the direct heirs to Louis XIV, both died suddenly within a short period, leaving the throne to a great-grandson, the child Louis XV. These deaths were officially ruled malignant fever. However, historical analysis suggests that the rapid elimination of 3 direct heirs was too convenient for the political rivals. The most potent theory points to systematic poisoning, the work of the suppressed poisoning networks that continued to operate after the affair of the poisons. The targets were likely too high-ranking to be exposed, so their deaths were quickly covered up as natural illness. The elimination of 3 generations of direct heirs in quick succession proves that the most ruthless assassins were willing to risk everything to control the future of France. This is the historical equivalent of decapitating the corporate ladder. It shows that in a regime built on personality, eliminating the leadership pipeline is the most effective way to seize power, proving that institutional stability is always weaker than ruthless individual ambition. But the most terrifying secret of the French harem was the quiet political practice of enforced sterility, a betrayal of the women's bodies to protect the throne. The French crown utilized every aspect of court life for political control, including the private lives of the royal women. The most disturbing truth of the harem was the political manipulation of reproduction, specifically the deliberate use of enforced sterility on women who were deemed politically dangerous. If a concubine or a low-ranking consort gained the king's affection but belonged to a politically threatening noble faction, the powerful queen or a minister might intervene. The historical record suggests the use of subtle, natural abortifacients or sterilization agents administered through herbal medicines disguised as health tonics. The goal was to ensure the woman remained a pleasure object but could not produce a royal heir who might become a focal point for the opposition. The women were often unaware they were being subjected to this political violence. Their bodies were treated as mere instruments of statecraft, their reproductive health controlled by the ruthless machinations of the court. This demonstrates the historical horror of using medicine for political control over women's bodies. The French court proves that the state will use the most intimate methods to manage succession and power dynamics, revealing a universal pattern of institutional control over human biology. But the final crushing secret of the Sun King's reign was the massive hidden financial catastrophe that the lavish splendor of Versailles was built upon. The Hall of Mirrors, the fountains, the endless parties, the lavish splendor of Versailles was not a display of wealth. It was a terrifying monument to national debt. The absolute monarchy was spending itself into oblivion. Louis XIV's endless wars, combined with the astronomical maintenance costs of the court, drained the French treasury. The king's finances were so precarious that he often resorted to bizarre, humiliating methods of fundraising, melting down silver furniture, debasing the currency, and selling new noble titles. The crown was openly desperate for money. The ultimate betrayal was that the nobility, who lived in unprecedented luxury at Versailles, were exempt from most taxes. The burden of the debt fell entirely upon the peasantry and the middle class, fueling the resentment that would eventually explode in the revolution. This illustrates the terrifying historical pattern of regime self-interest leading to economic collapse. When a ruling class becomes completely detached from the financial reality of its citizens, the system inevitably collapses under the weight of its own unsustainable privilege. But the king's final secret involved his body, a medically bizarre affliction that was caused by his own vanity and almost led to his death. For all his splendor, Louis XIV, the Sun King, suffered from a horrific and medically bizarre affliction directly linked to the vanity of his court: his teeth. The king's vanity demanded a highly sugared diet and elaborate oral hygiene, or lack thereof, leading to devastating consequences. Due to pervasive dental decay, Louis XV suffered from a massive dental abscess that led to the agonizing, life-threatening procedure of having all his upper teeth removed. The subsequent surgery was a medical disaster. A large part of his jawbone was removed, causing a fistula, a hole, between his mouth and his nasal cavity. For years, any liquid Louis XIV drank would painfully leak out through his nose. His doctors, terrified of failing the absolute monarch, resorted to cauterizing the hole with a red-hot iron, a procedure that often caused the king to collapse in agony. The most powerful man in Europe was constantly fighting the pain of his own rotten teeth and a burning iron. This highlights the historical reality that vanity often comes at a horrifying physical cost. The pursuit of the perfect image and the accompanying rich diet subjected the king to years of unimaginable self-inflicted medical torture, a terrifying balance between image and decay. We have witnessed the hidden murders, the debt, and the decay. Now, for the final critical verdict, we must confront the moral cost of Versailles. We have unsealed the secrets of Versailles, the chilling reality of the affair of the poisons, the political murders of the Dauphin, the systematic humiliation of the Queen, and the agonizing physical decay of the Sun King himself. The crown of dread in France was not overthrown by external force. It rotted from within, consumed by its own privilege, debt, and the hidden poison of its aristocracy. The pursuit of absolute power led to a system where murder was a political tool and the health of the heir was secondary to the purity of the bloodline. We have revealed the entire horrifying truth. But now, we turn the final question to you, the crown of dread audience. The French monarchy systematically permitted and covered up political murder, poisoning, and created catastrophic national debt to preserve the illusion of its absolute power. Was the subsequent French Revolution, with its terrifying bloodshed and chaos, the only possible and morally justifiable outcome for a system that had so ruthlessly destroyed its own people and corrupted its own soul? Let the world know your verdict. Drop your opinion in the comments below. Subscribe to Crown of Dread for more hidden history. And join us next time as we unearth the terrifying stories of blood and betrayal from the hidden courts of ancient Korea.